This is the BBC World Service.
On the fifth floor, Big Boss to Enter the Dragon. Do you remember Bruce Lee? The kung fu artist and Hollywood actor died 40 years ago, but his memory lives on, especially among some of the overgrown children here on the BBC World Service. That's on the fifth floor in an hour.
BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
It's 10 o'clock GMT. I'm Jackie Leonard, and this is the Newsroom. 30 minutes of the day's main stories from around the globe. Today, a tough new stance on asylum seekers in Australia.
From now on, any asylum seeker who arrives in Australia by boat will have no chance of being settled in Australia as refugees.
In Russia, opposition activist Alexei Navalny is freed on bail pending an appeal against his conviction for embezzlement. We'll hear from Moscow. We'll hear from the US too.
It's a day of reckoning for the city of Detroit.
The city files for bankruptcy. I'm Stephanie Davis.
Detroit is bankrupt, so what will that mean to the people who live there? A curfew is in place in Indian-administered Kashmir after security forces killed a number of protesters. There's more evidence that there might once have been life on Mars. And what was the financial legacy at the 2012 London Olympics?
There will never be any way of
testing. Newsroom, Neil has some more of the day's stories.
The Italian Prime Minister has mounted a strong defense of his Interior Minister, who is facing a no-confidence vote over the controversial deportation of the family of the dissident Kazakh businessman. There have been concerns that the extradition was carried out as a favor to the oil-rich authoritarian state. One of Cambodia's main opposition leaders has flown back into the country after 4 years in exile. Sam Rainsy was greeted by cheering supporters at the airport in Phnom Penh. He had fled Cambodia in the face of charges he said were politically motivated. The Burmese opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi has laid a wreath at the tomb of the country's independence hero, her father, Aung San, as the country marked the anniversary of his
city that gave us Motown, fantastic techno, and some of the best cars ever built is bankrupt. You'll get further coverage on that here on the BBC through the day.
Documentaries on the BBC World Service.
A new class of weapon has been used.
Our interconnected world has created a new covert form of warfare.
Someone just used a cyber weapon.
With potentially devastating consequences. The new front line is online. Under attack, the threat from cyberspace. On air and online, this Sunday on the BBC World Service. This is the BBC World Service. To tell us more, we can cross live to our correspondent Paul Wood.
Aline McFall in Cairo reports on the day's events.
We can speak now to NewsHour's Lise Difet. She's in Cairo. Tim Franks is leading our investigation.
Steve Rosenberg travelled to the Georgian capital of Tbilisi to find out.
BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Hello, I'm David Amano. This is the fifth floor on a Friday. Today, a death-defying experience in Mogadishu.
Normally, we journalists, we talk to the witnesses, but this time I was the closest witness that could describe what was happening, and I was so lucky to survive such a terrible attack.
And from BBC Mundo, a recipe for an irresistible story.
It has Cuba and missiles. You have North Korea. You have, of course, smuggling, the Panama Canal, a president tweeting the news. And then you have this boat, which has a very special history.
And Bruce Lee living on 40 years after his untimely death.
He managed to beguile them and charm them by telling stories of the movies that we saw as children. And they were Bruce Lee movies. Enter the Dragon.